Good morning, Year 3, and welcome to your next English lesson. Today we'll continue looking at the treehouse and read chapter 5. First of all, I wanted to say how pleased I have been with your comprehension work. Everyone is clearly watching the videos carefully and trying to take on board that advice I'm giving you. I'm seeing lots of lovely work that's well written. We're clearly trying to write our answers as sentences and not just individual words. We're not copying sections from the book. We're using the question to put our answer into our own words. The only thing to keep checking is our punctuation, making sure when we write the name of a day, the name of a month, or the name of a person, we are remembering to use those capital letters. Today I wanted to talk to you about question words quickly, because that does help us make sure we are answering the question correctly. If a question is asking when something happened, we're going to need a time. Maybe it's a time of day or an exact time. So look out for the words in the question. If the question is asking us how many, then our answer is going to have to be a number. If a question is asking us where, the word where in the question, our answer will have to be a place. If a question says why, then your answer will have to be a reason, the reason why something happened or the reason why someone did something. Maybe that would mean you'd have to use the word because. So do look at the question words carefully, just to make sure you are answering the question being asked. Today's activity again will be comprehension. We're on to chapter 5 now. Hopefully everyone will be able to read or listen to me read the chapter and answer these first 5 questions. And then if you can, the 3 extra questions as the extension at the bottom. I'm not going through individual questions anymore because I feel like we've done this quite a few times. We're very good at listening to the story or reading the story back and trying to work out where those answers are and putting those answers into our own words. I will be available on Google Meet. People have been using Google Meet more and more recently, which is brilliant. If you'd like to complete individual questions with me, you can come onto Google Meet. If you want to read out any answers and check them, please come onto Google Meet and read out your work. So well done to people that keep using Google Meet. If you need that extra help with 1 or 2 of the questions, please do keep using it. If you'd like to go on and read chapter 5 now and answer those questions yourself, please do so. If you'd rather listen to me read the chapter, I'll just stop the video for a second. You won't notice it. It'll just carry on playing straight through, and then I'll read chapter 5 for you. If you are listening to me read a story, please do have the book in front of you, and you can follow on. It'll be really useful to track me reading the story and for you to know where those answers might be on certain pages. Chapter 5, A Useless Present. The parcel that came in November was long and thin, and Dada had drawn big fat raindrops all over the inside. Dear William and Sprog, you're having real autumn weather, aren't you? Maybe you'd like this to help you get safely to the treehouse. Hope you like it. Love, Dada. P.S. I'll be home as soon as I can manage it. Sprog undid the string. When he opened the paper, he grinned. It's an umbrella, a big yellow one. An umbrella? William went bright red. Knights don't have umbrellas. He scowled and knocked it onto the floor. Mum picked it up again. Maybe Dada doesn't know the treehouse is a castle. Have you told him? I can't tell him everything, William said crossly. It takes too much writing. He ought to be here. Then he'd know what was going on. We can tell him about the castle today, Sprog, when we write and say thank you for the umbrella. William stamped his foot. I'm not going to say thank you for it. It's a useless present. He said he'd send us things for the treehouse, and this hasn't got anything to do with it. Maybe you ought to go upstairs, Mum said very quietly, until you feel more sensible. William opened his mouth. Sprog thought he was going to argue, but he didn't. He changed his mind and marched upstairs to his bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Sprog started to follow, but Mum shook her head. William needs to be on his own. Go and play in the garden. So Sprog trailed outside. He thought he'd go and look at the treehouse. The weather had been so wild and windy that it hadn't been out in the garden for nearly a week. He walked down to the chestnut tree and grabbed hold of the two broken branches, ready to start climbing. But then he saw something brown and shiny in the grass at his feet. He bent down to pick it up and ouch! He pricked his fingers. Sucking them, he crouched down to see what had hurt him. It was the prickly outside of one of the chestnuts off the tree. It had fallen to the ground and burst open to show the ripe, glossy nut inside. Carefully, Sprog pulled the chestnut out and looked at it. It was a bit like a conker, but flat on one side and not so shiny, and the bottom point was covered with silky silver hair. Sprog stroked it. Then he looked around to see if there were any more. Yes, there were one over there, right out of its prickles, and another one next to it, and another. They were everywhere. The wind and rain must have brought them all down, because the ground under the tree was covered with brown chestnuts and prickly cases. Sprog started to collect the chestnuts. Slowly and patiently, he tracked backwards and forwards, picking them up and piling them into a big heap. Then, when he'd found them all, he stood back and looked at the heap. What was he going to do with all those nuts? If Dada had been there, they could have roasted them, the way he did with his father. But Dada wasn't there. Sprog frowned. He wanted to take the nuts up to the treehouse and hide them there, but he didn't know how to carry them. His pockets weren't big enough. And if he put them in a bag, he wouldn't be able to climb up with it. What he needed was a bag that could go up by itself, or something that could go up by itself. He was beginning to have an idea. Slowly, he walked back to the kitchen and put his head round the door. Mum, can I take the umbrella down to the treehouse? If you like, said Mum, but she looked surprised. Is it raining? No, but I need it for something, and I need some string too. Mum gave him the string off the parcel. He could see she was curious, but she didn't say anything, only be careful. As Sprog carried the umbrella down the garden, he worked out his plan. He had to do everything in the right order. The first thing was to fix the string. He left the umbrella beside a heap of chestnuts and climbed up the treehouse with the string in his pocket. He tied one end of the string to a branch above his head and let the rest of it fall to the ground. Then he climbed down and opened the umbrella upside down. Scooping the chestnuts, he dropped them in and tied them to the other end of the string. Sorry, let me read that again. Upside down. Scooping up the chestnuts, he dropped them in and then tied the other end of the string to the umbrella handle. Right, now it was time to test his invention. Scrambling up to the treehouse, he untied the top end of the string, leaving it looped over the branch above his head. Then he began to pull slowly and steadily, and up came the umbrella, bringing the chestnuts with it. There was only just enough room for it to get through. Once it snagged on a dead branch, and Sprog had to lean down and snap the branch off. Once it looked as though it might tip up and send all the chestnuts tumbling back to the ground. But Sprog kept pulling very carefully, and at last it reached the treehouse with all the chestnuts still on board. Grinning, Sprog pulled it onto the platform. Then he reached into the hole behind the cabin to find the plastic bag with his toffees in. There were 2 toffees left. He ate one and put the other in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he began to unload the chestnuts into the empty bag. He was just stuffing the bag back into the hole when William came racing down the garden, looking cheerful again. "Hello, Sprog," he said. Then his eyes opened wide. "What are you doing?" "Getting things up to the treehouse," said Sprog. "It's my invention. Look." He pushed the umbrella off the platform and lowered it carefully. "He put something in." William's eyes gleamed. "That's fantastic. You've made a hoist. We'll use it for..." He looked round eagerly. "Let's have some of those prickly things. They can be ammunition to throw at our enemies." He filled the umbrella with the prickly cases from the chestnuts, but he wouldn't let Sprog pull them up. He insisted on climbing up the treehouse to do it himself. "Just wait till I tell Dada," he said, as he hauled on the string. "This is the best present ever." They spent so long throwing chestnut prickles and hoisting more up there it was almost dark before they came in, but they still had time to write their letter. William did the first bit. "Dear Dada, it's a brilliant present. Thank you. Knights don't mind rain because of their armour, but they need to get things into the castle if enemies are all round. You'll see how when you come back. Love, William." Sprog drew a picture of how the umbrella worked and wrote his own message. We played till it was dark. Thank you for listening, Year 3. Remember, I'll be on Google Meet if you'd like to go through any of your answers or check any of your work. Thank you for listening.